Hi everybody, my name is Mark Batty. I'm the Edexcel History Subject Advisor. In this session, we'll present the key themes from the Summer 22 exam series and give teachers the opportunity to explore this feedback. Now, because it's quite a long session, we've split the video into 4 parts, and this is the first part, which will focus on the Summer 22 entry data, grade boundaries and statistics, and results plus and access to scripts. So starting with the Summer 22 entry data, this summer we had 156,341 entries for Edexcel GCSE History. And as you can see in the chart on the right hand side, our specification continues to be very popular and the entries have grown about 20% since 2018. This summer we also had COVID optionality in place, allowing teachers to drop one topic across either paper 1 or paper 2. And as you can see from the second chart on the right hand side, route A was the most popular option as 78% of schools chose this route, and that was to drop one of the paper 2 topics. Route B, 22% of schools chose to drop paper 1. And obviously the decisions on which topic to drop were driven by a number of factors, including the order in which topics were taught or which paper students found most challenging. Now, if we look at the paper 1 thematic study entries, you can see on the chart that that big blue segment medicine is continuing to be the most popular thematic study, and that attracted about 65% of the entry. Crime and punishment in green also continues to be popular with about 33% of the entry. This summer was the first exam series for our new migration thematic study. That had a very small entry of about 215 students, but obviously it was the first summer that it was introduced. And in a recent survey of teachers, we expect a lot more to be teaching it from next year onwards. Now, in terms of the Route A entries, 127,317 students sat Route A this summer. Now, these students only sat one paper 2 topic. That's either the British Depth Study or the Period Study. And the vast majority of Route A centres chose to teach the British Depth Study in paper 2. So as you can see on the right hand side, 79% of Route A students sat the British Depth Study and dropped the Period Study. Now, the chart on the right hand side below that figure shows the proportions of students in Route A across all the paper 2 topics. So as you can see, Elizabeth was by far the most popular topic chosen, with about 40% of the Route A entries. The Norman Conquest was the next most popular, and then the first period study on the list is the Cold War. That had approximately 14% of the Route A entries. Now, if we look at the combined paper 2 entries across routes A and B, these two charts compare the 2019, which is pre-COVID, with the 22 entries. Now, the chart on the left-hand side shows the British Depth Studies, and as you can see, there's not much difference in entry across those topics. There's a slight drop in Norman Conquest, Richard and John, and Henry VIII. Now, interestingly, very few centres chose to drop Elizabethan England in paper 2, only about 5%. Now, if we compare that with the chart on the right-hand side, which is the period studies combined across routes A and B, you can see that there was a big drop-off in centres for the American West and to a lesser extent the Cold War. 70% of centres chose to drop American West and about 45% of centres chose to drop the Cold War across both routes. And then moving on to paper 3, now this was compulsory, so again this is a combined look at both routes A and B, and as you can see from the chart, Germany in blue continues to dominate paper 3. That attracted 129,093 entries across the whole specification. And then America in red there, it's still reasonably popular with 21,433 entries, and Russia with 4,654 entries in green on the chart. China was the smallest option, attracting 547 entries, and these proportions have remained relatively stable across the lifetime of the specification. Now, these two tables just summarise the proportion of students which sat the different papers. So on the left, you can see the proportion of students in Route A that sat paper 1 and then the British depth study, or paper 2, the period study, and then the proportion of Route B students. And as you can see, the majority of students were Route A, sitting the British depth, paper 1 and paper 3, as we've already seen. And then on the right, this table just shows the proportions of students sitting all of the papers. Obviously, paper 3 is compulsory, and you can see the relative popularity of the British depth compared to the period study there, with a lot of centres dropping the period study due to COVID optionality. So obviously, we're aware that a lot of schools haven't been teaching the paper 2 period study for a long time, and we are planning to support you this term. So please look out for more information on training and support that will be coming up in later slides. Just another thing to note here that's quite interesting is the average cohort size varied. So the average cohort size on Route A was 69, whereas on Route B was 55. Now we're just going to move on and look at some grade boundaries and statistics from this summer. So you can find the grade boundaries on our website. I've put a link on the screen. You can also just search for grade boundaries in the little search tool on the Pearson website. Now these grade boundaries have been separated out for Route A and Route B, and this is obviously because the total number of marks differs across each route because of the different combinations of topics. So on Route A, the total raw mark was 132, and on Route B, it was 116. Now we've provided subject level grade boundaries on our website for each possible combination of topics through the specification. And this means that we can adjust the grade boundaries for any difference in the level of demand on different options and award grades more accurately to reflect student performance. So on your screen, there are 2 examples here. Obviously, there are lots more in the actual grade boundaries document, but this is just to highlight how it's laid out and what those differences are. So on the screen here, you can see that the only difference between these 2 routes is the British depth study B1 and B2. So B1 is the Normans and Anglo-Saxons, and B2 is Richard and John. So then if you move across to the grade boundaries, you can see that there's a very small difference in boundaries. And the top one at grade 7, for example, is 2 marks lower, and that is to reflect the small difference in the paper grade boundaries between B1 and B2. We've also provided notional paper level grade boundaries for each paper. They're in a separate document on the website, and they're on obviously the same link. Now the notional grade boundaries are exactly the same for any option that appears on both Route A and Route B. For example, the grade 7 on paper 31 Germany was 35 out of 52 on both routes. Now, in terms of the grading outcomes in summer 22, Ofqual asked exam boards to award grades that reflect a midpoint between the 2019 pre-COVID series and this 2021 series in terms of the percentage of students achieving each grade. Now, this doesn't mean that the grade boundaries would be exactly halfway between 2021 and 2019. Obviously, grade boundaries can vary from year to year depending on how students perform, and as we've seen, they also vary across different options depending on, for example, how accessible a paper is. This year, students also had optionality, which was different from summer 2019, and also we need to be a bit careful about the autumn research series in November 20 and 21 because they had very small entries, so they should be treated with caution. Now we have provided detailed grade statistics on our website, and again there's a link on screen, but you can just search for grade statistics on the website. And on the screen here we've provided the cumulative percentage outcomes for Edexcel GCSE History over the past few series, so you can see how they've changed, and also you can see how those percentage outcomes in 2022 are slightly lower than 2021 but higher than 2019. So this slide shows similar information, but what we've done is we've split the percentage outcomes out across Route A and Route B, as you can see in blue. And the other thing to look at is we've provided them for 2022, which was the exam series just gone, and also 2021, which was when we had tags in place or teacher assessed grades. And something that's interesting to note is that the percentage outcomes across route B are actually higher than the percentage outcomes across route A for both of those exam series. And this is supported by the statistical data such as Key Stage 2 predictions, and also reflects the fact that route B typically had lower cohort sizes, and essentially it was a slightly more able cohort, and that's why their percentage outcomes are slightly higher. It's also worth bearing in mind, though, that obviously the majority of students, 79%, sat route A. Okay, we're just going to move on to have a quick look at Results Plus and access to scripts. Results Plus is our free results analysis tool, which lets you analyze your students' results from the summer series. Now, you need to have an Edexcel online account, which is linked to your centre in order to use Results Plus. If you don't have this, please speak to your exams officer, and it's relatively quick for them to set you up. There are lots of videos on our website which explain how to use Results Plus, and you can find a link to Results Plus at the top of the screen there. Now, as well as looking at your own centre's data, you can also look at global data, and this is really useful. It shows the mean marks for the whole cohort of students on every single question, and it also divides them up by different grade points. So you can see, for example, how grade 9 students did on a particular question and compare that to grade 7, grade 4, etc. Now, this global data is also available now on our website in a spreadsheet. So if you go to the qualification page, you should be able to find that. Now, I just want to talk through a very quick example of how you could use Results Plus to help make improvements. So, for example, you may not have got as many grade 9s as you'd hoped for. So one thing you could do is go into Results Plus and look at your cohort paper analysis. And that shows you obviously your average scores on each of the questions for your school versus the national cohort. And this you could use to identify questions which your students perform poorly in. So on the screen here, there's an example from paper 3, Germany, the first question, which is the source inference question. And this particular centre, their mean mark was 2.51 out of 4 compared to the national average of 2.57 out of 4. So then if you're aiming for more grade 9s, this is a question that you could look at in more detail to see how you could improve performance. You can then use Results Plus to download a spreadsheet of your students' marks, and these spreadsheets will contain the marks of every student on every question. So then you can look at these questions that you're concerned about or want to make improvements on, and identify students that whose performance you feel could be improved, and also maybe look at some high scoring scripts as well so that you can compare those. Then you could download the Results Plus Global Results Analysis spreadsheet, either from Results Plus or from our website. And then, you could look at how the whole cohort have performed in terms of their mean marks at the different grade points. So perhaps we could see what the mean mark of grade 9 students was on this question. Then you could use our access to scripts service to download the scripts of your students that you wish to look at in more detail. And then you could compare your own students' performance to the exemplars in the examiner's reports. Now, obviously, we can't comment on your students' mark scripts from the summer series, but please do contact me if you need help with understanding the mark scheme or requirements of specific questions. So that brings us on to our free access to scripts service. And this is a really powerful service. It lets you analyze your students' marked exam scripts from the summer series. Now, you can use this service up until the 16th of December this year. After the 16th of December, the service will be no longer available, so you won't be able to access your student scripts. Now, to access your student scripts, you need to have their permission, so please bear that in mind. On our website, we've got lots of information and advice about how to use the service. There is case studies, so please do make use of this service. It's really powerful. Okay, that's the end of part 1. I hope you found it useful. In the next video, we'll continue on to part 2, and we'll be looking at some senior examiner feedback combined with some exemplar student answers, with questions targeting AO1 and AO2, knowledge and understanding and explanation and analysis. Thank you very much. I hope you found that useful. These are my contact details.